Welcome, everyone. We are live, Alex. You're good to go here? I know you're just dropping off your kids.
You get what you get. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Great to meet you.
Nice to connect. And so appreciate you hopping on. Sorry for everyone for starting a little bit late today.
It was my fault.
I get it. We're all parents as well, so we totally get that vibe. But welcome, Alex. We can kick things off. I was going to start with just a quick introduction, background on yourself, and feel free to fill in the gaps. But for those that don't know Alex, she's an experienced securities attorney. She's trained in the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and international firm Mayer Brown, as well as running a very successful solo practice with clients across 8 countries. Alex is also a 2-time founder with 1 exit and has been involved in blockchain since 2016. She is a subject matter expert in blockchain practices, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and general token offerings. So I stole that from your bio, Alex, but feel free to share anything else that we may have missed. Just introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm having issues trying to figure out what I need to correct in your camera. So FYI, audience, whatever's wrong, I can't fix it. Hey, look,
you look good.
Yeah, I just ran from dropping off my kid who didn't like the gymnastics instructor. She wanted a different instructor. So what are you going to do?
Put them on blast. I'm just kidding.
No, they're all awesome. They're all awesome. But, she's 7. What do you look, man.
Yeah, of course.
They're great. And they're all whatever, 7. So this is what you get. I had a better idea of what I was going to look like, but you got this. No, thank you very much. I actually am a consultant primarily because I do something that's actually, I think, a lot more unique than law, because I think law is actually much more a commodity than it used to be. So because I have a lot of business experience, I actually help a lot more with getting into people's businesses and helping the business get better. So law is one aspect of what I do. I do a lot of it's basically legal and operations consulting, but it's, people come to me with a question and I can help with fixing, one particular issue. But a lot of times we just get in there and figure out, the real issue, which is how do we either stop the bleeding or help the business make more money? And we add revenue streams, or we figure out different tokenomics, or we do a lot in non-blockchain stuff too. So like fintech, and I've been doing a lot of AI, making sure that we have the right technology for whatever problem we're trying to solve or something like that. So it's been a lot of fun. And actually figuring out, how the compliance issue fits into the business is really the important part. It's not about making a business that fits into compliance, right? It's really just, make your business work and we'll figure out the compliance piece along the way. But it's, you don't build a business around compliance, just like you don't build a business around taxes. Build your business to solve a problem and make it make revenue, and all the other stuff should fit in along the way. So
super helpful. Did you have an initial interest, I guess, in blockchain, or your experience kind of working in the SEC? Did that drive you and you're like, oh, I guess now I'm in blockchain? Or did you have a kind of a crypto blockchain origin story there?
So after I sold my business, it was 2016, and I was like, what am I going to do next? So originally, I came actually to build. I was going to create a financial marketplace that was going to exclude a group of people that have always had asymmetric information. And that pisses me off. I really don't like that. And I originally tried to get them regulated out of existence, and I got stonewalled from every angle. It was really impressive. So I was like, well, I'm going to build a marketplace that excludes them, and that way they don't have any way to participate. So it doesn't matter if they're allowed to, they don't get the ability to. So the problem was at that time, we really just had Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it was really slow. And there's just no way that you can build a financial marketplace when it takes like 9 hours to close. So, and there's, we still have the geolocation problem, but we have a lot more nodes. But at the time, we just had so much discrepancy in nodes in location. So I was like, well, it's just fundamentally unfair too. So I disbanded the team. And at the time, I was one of the few people that understood regulation and operations. And so a lot of people were just asking me to help them with operations, like, hey, can you help me like make this so that I don't go to jail? And then they were asking me to speak at my first conference. It was a packed conference. I remember I spoke at this conference. There were 200 people, all of like crypto. It was like 200 people. And I was like, there's so many people in crypto now. Anyway, so I started speaking a lot, and I started helping people, and they just asked me, like, can you help me out? And I was like, sure. It was such a collaborative environment then. If you guys had been in there at that time, it was just this great, I'd never seen anything like it before. It was just, oh, hey, you're working on this. I have a dev that does that, but he's going to finish up with what he's doing in about, 20, 30 days. Like I'll let him, I'll send him over when I'm done. It was just this kind of amazing environment. So when everything sort of started shifting to like, oh, it's a bunch of criminals, I'm like, what are you talking about? These are like the most, it's like the warmest group of people. I'd never met anybody like this. Like I was like, you guys have to just come in and see what this is like to build here. It was just an experience I'd never seen before. So I was just like, I'm never leaving. It's amazing. It's so wonderful. So anyway, that was my welcome into blockchain. It was an amazing time, and I wish everybody had an opportunity to experience some industry that had that kind of, I don't really know that there's any other industry that had that period of like just complete collegiality, no competition. It really wasn't about, people trying to do something that beats someone else. It was really about, let's just build this amazing thing together. And the idea now that there was this competitive thing between Ethereum and Bitcoin, like that was not what it was at all. And I don't know. I just
you're talking like more 2017, like when it was like even before that, where everybody
it was really just together. About like changing the world. It really was this sort of spirit of changing the world and making something that everybody could participate in, and building something that had access that everybody could join in. Like, I don't know if you guys remember Waves. It's really old school. Where anybody could make a coin. Like, so if you guys know what, like, pump.fun is what I started. We were talking about that. And I was like, y'all don't remember Waves, right? But at the time, that's really kind of what Waves was, where anybody could make a coin, right? And my friend, who is very old, she was related. She was in the DCG. She was working there, and she's like, my dog made a coin. She just called me up and she's like, my dog made a coin, and I was like, what and why? And she said, my dog made a coin on Waves, and I was like, okay, what is this? And she's like, well, because it was the first time that you really had this pre-formatted coin. This is before ERC20s came out, right? So the whole idea is that anybody could make a token, and this goes into this concept of what could meme coins be, et cetera, and the limitations of them. That's what we were talking about, because I was saying we've had this idea for a long time, but this concept originally was, let's just throw this out there and see what people do with it. That kind of idea of like, let's just give people technology and see what they do with it. It was this just kind of a remarkable thing. There was no feeling of ownership. And it was just it's just something I wish everybody kind of has the opportunity to experience at some point in their life. So,
yeah.
And that coin, of course, is Dogecoin today. Now that we know, your friend's dog.
No, it wasn't.
Joke.
It wasn't. It's funny because I didn't even, until I started talking about my friend's dog, I was like, it was before Doge and Shiba and all of that. But it was just so funny. She had one of those pocket dogs that she carried around with her everywhere. And so she's like, I made my dog a coin. People bought it just because we were all friends. It's funny.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, I really appreciate you being on here. I think the stuff that's super interesting for us, especially coming from the custodian side, is, we've seen this this kind of shift from crowdfunding into, say, more like security tokens, and to this landscape of different SEC comments on things. And not to get too heavy right away, but while you're here, we want to use your expertise of what was kind of the interesting thing for you to kind of guide the projects you work on and your focus? Because I think being a lawyer typically are risk averse. So you might say, hey, anything that has emissions, anything that pays out to people that holding the token, say like stakers of Ethereum, you might be like, hey, I want to stay away from that. I just want to build on Bitcoin. Or is that something where you're like, look, I think that's a cool long-term model. We need to have emissions. I want to go do more of that. And you recently, wrote a book we'll talk about later, but yeah, would love to kind of hear, did you want to go the risky side of kind of looking like a security, or did you want to stay away from that?
I don't look at it that way. So in terms of risk, we all have different risk profiles. And I tend to think of myself as conservative, very conservative compared to most people in blockchain. Somewhat conservative compared to most investors, very risky very risk friendly compared to most lawyers, right? So it's really just kind of a range. So I mean, as it turns out, when I was at the SEC, I had a group of friends who were also attorneys there, and we used to sit around at lunch and talk about businesses that we would start. And it turns out I was the only one that was serious. I was the only one that ever opened up a business. I like risk I can control more than anything else, right? So I 100% look at risk benefit, and I look at risk that's reasonable. I don't consider, I don't look at past price action as something that reduces risk, which for some reason people in blockchain tend to look at past price action as oh, well, it has gone up, therefore it will go up. That doesn't make sense to me. I'm definitely somebody that looks at data. I'm very data heavy. So for me, when I look at projects, I have specific things that I will look at when I accept a project, right? Of somebody who wants to come and work with me. I look at, first of all, is this something real? Or is it a scam? I absolutely don't take on scam projects, and I absolutely don't take on things that are, that don't have any substance behind them. I don't take on things that are, if something that isn't going to work, but the founder is legitimate and the founder is willing to modify the project so it could work, I'll still consider it, right? But if the project isn't going to work and the founder is like, no, I'm going to do this, then there's nothing for me to do, right? Because I really want to build in the space. And if we have a founder that's just building something to build something or to throw a token on a marketplace, I'm not interested. That is not interesting to me. And that is not something that's going to grow the space. So fundamentally, what I'm looking at is this something that's going to add value to the blockchain space, right? Is this going to add to our ecosystem overall? Or is this just more activity? I'm not looking for churn. And that, I think, is a lot of what keeps happening. I'm not looking for people who are continuing just to add, more market activity. I think we have too much market activity, right? We're losing so much value because essentially what we're doing is too early IPOs, right? We're offering IPO value for things that have not been properly de-risked, and we're losing hundreds of millions of dollars in value. So we're essentially not creating the people who could grab wealth when they take de-risked tokens and stock and sell them to the public with pent-up demand, right? So we don't have pent-up demand. We don't have things that have been properly de-risked. We don't have people who are purchasing things cheaply, holding on to them, and then releasing them to pent-up demand at a much higher value and creating wealth so that these people can then reinvest in this ecosystem, right? We're draining tons of liquidity and we're assuming that the churn is sufficient value. But what are we doing? We're losing hundreds of millions of dollars in value. And people think that the 1,000 here, 10,000 there is huge amounts of wealth. It's not. It's change compared to like what we should be building in this space. So we do have some wonderful projects in this space, but they're vastly overshadowed by just the fluffy churn and the PR that we tend to produce, as opposed to, the projects that, I've seen that don't get a lot of attention, but are actual use cases, that are generating revenue. And it's amazing to me. Like I have, a friend of mine who's a huge investor, and he thinks that his project, he actually told me, he's like, this might be the first use case in blockchain. And I almost choked on my drink. I'm like, are you new? Like, this is not the first use case in blockchain. So, and I love him. I think he's wonderful. Like, if you're listening, look, man, I totally respect you still. I know you know who you are. And I respect you and your opinion, and I'm not laughing at you, right? But there's so much, right? That there's so much being built out there that we're not talking about. We're wasting our time talking about stupid celebrity coins and things like that.
I think you're kind of.
Do you think those? Go ahead,
Avi.
I just to piggyback off that, talking to your friend in VC, like that probably was a lot of the issue, right? The VC model where you're kind of spray and praying, and if one of them hits, that's great. Especially early days. Have you talked with like other VCs that have like pumped the brakes a little bit in terms of like making sure they fully understand what the tech and beyond the tech, like what's the actual application? And do you see, I agree with you too, in terms of like there's too much and there's not enough liquidity to make every coin amazing, right? Especially if there's no application. Do you see kind of a form of Darwinism, happening over the next couple of years, where you look around, there's 300 companies and a third of them or 2/3 of them are gone at the next conference?
Never seen
yes
that.
And no. I mean, the real problem that we have here is, as much as we're like, yeah, just kill the bad companies, who does that hurt? The retail investors, right? That's not what we want here, right? We don't want to just be like, yeah, whatever, screw the crap companies. Like, what we really need is, I don't want, first, let me start again here. First, we need to still be able to have a space where the prices are affordable, like they are in this space. There's something incredibly valuable here about the pricing of our opportunities. Second, there's something very valuable about the access of our opportunities, right? And if we can focus anything in our, with the power of the crypto vote, right? I want it to be, let's get rid of the accredited investor rule, because that is one of the things that is keeping the rich and the poor. We need opportunity more than anything else, right? We need opportunity. There is nothing magical about people who have a certain amount of money that makes them better investors. And there is nothing that says that they're using their money wisely or able to recoup or using, the proper professionals or whatever. They're not doing whatever it is magical that accredited investor rule thinks that they're doing. So we need opportunity.
This coming from somebody that worked for the SEC. That's pretty powerful.
I'm not what people think I am. I'm not really sure what people think I am, but I'm not what people think I am. I worked at several government agencies. Like I don't hate the government. I don't have a party. I'm literally an independent. I like things that are true. I'm very issue by issue, and I'm very much like, look, some things work and some things don't. Some things, the crypto community screws up and they screw up. And some things, the government screws up and they screw up. And some things retail investors screw up and some things VCs screw up. And why can't we just say, those people did this wrong, let's do it better next time? Why do we have to say everything one side does is magically perfect and they never screw up? Like, nobody gets better that way. We just have to say, this part didn't go well, let's not do that anymore, right? Like,
so do you think? No, and that's great. I mean, so I started in the space late 2012, 2013, like way back in the old days, as I call it.
So you remember the magic days, right?
Oh, it was great. It was
yeah,
fantastic.
right.
I mean, you literally would watch it go up $500 and be like, oh, I think it's gonna fall. And it would just fall, and but it was fun. It was everybody was working with everybody. It has that. That's where I'm going with this. What have you seen change since those days? Like, we've obviously evolved a lot on the regulatory side, on the tech side, but what have you seen change from your vantage point?
Okay, I'm going to be honest because that's all I can be, right? So here's what happened. The VCs came in, a VC came in and said, hey, you can sell those tokens as a security and it's not regulated. That was wrong, right? And that screwed up the industry because nobody thought that originally. Nobody was trying to do that. People were just kicking tokens to each other to try, hey, test out my blockchain and see if it works. Nobody was trying to do that at first. And then there was this issue of righteousness that kind of invaded it, that never existed either. We are entitled to do this, and we shouldn't be governed, which never existed before either, right? So then people tried to take advantage of other people. So we had first wrong information and entitlement, and then greed. And those three things vastly shifted this environment. And it happened in the space of like a year and a half.
Yep.
Massively changed the environment. And part of it was, a huge jump in price, and some people got very wealthy and they started thinking that they knew better than they actually did, when a huge amount of it was just a shift in environment that they couldn't have predicted and couldn't have controlled. Right. And, I think, rather than trying to say, okay, what do we do from here? Let's start consulting people. They started trying to dictate, and a lot. I mean, there's so much fault to go around. A lot of lawyers who didn't know what they were doing, who were trying to essentially pretend that they knew what they were doing, and made up law that was clearly false, that screwed up the whole industry. And I don't know what made these people do this. I remember someone trying to convince me that a SAFT was legal, like a former partner of mine. And I was like, that's clearly not legal. I don't know why you would think that was legal. And he literally told me, have you seen the website? And I said, listen to what you just said. Look at the website. I said, if some client told you that, would you be convinced that that was legal? And he's like, no. And I said, what are you telling me here? And so, then they were like, well, they're not legal. And I was like, yeah, of course they're not legal. That's what the SEC said. And I was like, they're not legal. And I said, look, we have strong legal arguments, but the people who then wanted to make arguments against the SEC didn't then say, what arguments do we have? They started acting like bullies. And so the SEC started acting like a bully back. huge amounts of fault on both sides, right? And we have wonderful, legitimate arguments, right? But we're not using them. We're not using the best arguments against regulatory regime. We do have excellent arguments, but instead we're using arguments that have been used before and not worked. And now we're just trying to bully, in the same way we get bullied. And I don't really think that gives us either legal or moral high ground. So I feel like, all of this is just devolving into some testosterone laden ridiculousness, when instead what we really are trying to do is have, a true financial and market opportunity change. It's a real change. It's a technology change. More changes are going to be like blockchain than they are like old technology, especially with the advent of quantum computing. So, we have to figure this out in the future, because how like AI is kind of a layer that fits on all sorts of technologies. Quantum computing is going to be like that. And it's going to be more like adding a layer of shifting technology on top of everything. And we're a shifting technology. Shifting technologies don't fit into normal regulatory schemes. They can't. So we need to look at how to regulate shifting technologies. This is a problem. But what I don't want is for people to look at blockchain and say they're all criminals or they're all bullies or whatever it is. And I don't want people to look at the government and just say, they're all evil and bad and just want to shut down a technology, because neither of that is either completely true or completely untrue. What we need to do is look at this and say, look, we have a new technology. What we're doing now is not working. We need to figure out a better way to work, but we need to leave all the egos behind. This ego stuff is just masking everything, and it's keeping it from working.
Like a hockey stick. I mean,
it's keeping everything from working, and all it's doing is trying to create sound bites for certain people to make their reputations grow, and it's at the expense of other people, right? At the end of the day, what are we trying to do? I mean, we need to help retail investors. That's what we're trying to do, in my mind, right? Maybe that's not what everybody's trying to do. But in my mind, this is a sea change for retail investors. And we have to keep that in our minds, right? If we want to do that, this can't be about a particular, VC or a particular government, official's ego. This has to be about, let's figure out how to do this so we give opportunity to people that are not asset holders. Because remember, when we talk about the economy being good or bad, we are not talking about workers. We're not talking about how easy or hard it is to buy groceries, because that's not even included in the consumer price index. They take out the price of food and gas. That's the core of what most people spend money on, right?
Amen.
They're talking about asset holders. And this is the only way most people can become asset holders, is through blockchain and through crypto assets. So we need to talk about this is the way that people can actually take part in benefiting off of the economy, or even being part of an economic discussion. So I mean, really
you hit on the head. I think that's given the industry a lot of, people outside the industry, they see it, they see, we'll just say somebody was formerly in charge of FTX. He's in jail now, obviously, but up until he got arrested, he was as blatant as, outspoken is probably the best word, until he got arrested.
He was heralded, everyone. He was on the cover of all magazines,
Yeah, and then you get arrested, and it's
right?
Oh, yeah, and it's I'm sorry, but it's no, you're not.
You got caught.
Yeah. And so I guess, Alex, what do you think on tying this to super recent events? We were in Nashville last week, and some of the feedback after people had time to digest it, of the different RFK spoke, Donald Trump spoke, and they're incorporating crypto blockchain as part of their overall party platform. But some of the speeches were obviously like to rile up the crowd, say, hey, you guys are the next like Edisons, the next, early like industrialists. We are going to buy, is it 5 million or 4 million Bitcoin was part of RFK's plan. And a lot of this is just price oriented. Talking about firing Gary Gensler, which gets a lot of roars. But what do you feel like is really missing from that platform? Like, what would you want to see added to a political platform that you're actually saying that's, more of like, hey, let's actually bring up the small guy. Let's actually get rid of the accredited investor rule that they didn't cover.
I don't really need Bitcoin to be part of a political platform. Honestly, what I need is for politics to be actually removed from a lot of money in general. What I want personally, right? I want the accredited investor rule removed. I want people given a chance to build assets. Ideally, what I would want is a safety net so more people can be entrepreneurs, right? There is nothing in capitalism that says you can't have a floor with no ceiling, right? Capitalism is often misinterpreted as saying, no ceiling means no floor. But the truth is you'd have more and better innovators if they did not feel that taking a risk meant the risk of poverty. Right now, a lot of innovation is left only to the top 5% of the population, top 5% financially, because they can afford to take a risk. Right? They can afford to drop out of Harvard. But if you're the first person in your family to go to college, you're not going to betray your family by dropping out of school and not taking a job because your family worked very hard to put you in that position. You're carrying a lot of people on your back, right? If the risk of failure is poverty, or the risk of failure is your whole family doesn't eat, then you are not going to become an entrepreneur. You want to see more innovation in this country, you want to see more entrepreneurship in this country, then make sure that the risk of failure does not drop you into poverty. Right? Not forever, right? But make sure there's some safety net there so that more people feel free to innovate. What else do I want to see? I want to see a real option to have an alternative currency because I love competition. I am a true capitalist. I think that alternative currencies are a human right because honestly, if you want people to have real freedom of capital, you want to know that anybody's economy is based on human decisions. Human decisions are often stupid, right? People make bad decisions and they're free to make bad decisions, right? People make decisions on what their economy should be based on. I'm going to tie it to that economy, which is dumb all the time. Pegged economies are stupid. I'm going to make it based on these, sugar beets. I'm going to make it based on tulips. I'm going to make it based on, on agrarian economy. Oh crap, it's a drought year. We have no money coming in. Like, I don't know what I'm going to make it based on, but sometimes you make mistakes. And sometimes your economy can't support itself because of a mistake. That has to be possible. And the people don't starve. Why? Oh, this year our economy it doesn't have enough money to support people. So instead of printing a bunch of money and having everybody run and have to put all of their money in perishables, they should be able to salvage the value that they already have by running and putting it into some other currency that's an alternative currency, including the government. The government should be able to salvage their currency by putting it into another currency. They have the freedom to go put it in another currency. The population should be able to put it in another currency as well, a borderless currency. And then, if the government wants to have people in their fiat, they should fight for them. If you want me to put my money in dollars, give me a deal. Make me a return on the money that I get on it. Make me a deal to put my money in dollars. Oh, I'm going to put my money in dollars. You're going to give me a return. Okay. Alternate currency. You want my money back? Make me a deal. I'll put my money in that alternate currency. Both of them will be better, more efficient. They will operate smoother. They will be more honest. They will be less corrupt because they have competition. They will both have each other watching over each other. That is what I want. So I don't really think that we need government necessarily doing anything to do this. Doing anything, to over any of these, like financial platforms necessarily. What I really need is competition. I want true competition. I think I am, like I said, a true capitalist. I think that competition is a good, healthy thing. I just want to be free to enjoy it. And I think that there's a lot of ways that we can foment it. But I think a lot of the things that people celebrate and relish is truly monopoly. People love winners. And then they love celebrating the winners. They love the power pose, right, on the top of the magazines. But that is not actually competition. We want true competition, which means winners can come from anywhere. If you want winners to come from anywhere, then we need to provide the ability for winners to come from anywhere. That means a safety net, the ability for someone to come from anywhere. Now, look, you got to do more work. If you come from somewhere poor, look, it's more work to get up there. You do have a head start.
Yeah, but
if you come from somewhere wealthy.
I think you hit on a good, like, this is a great point, because look at even in the media space, like, so all these awards that are given out for platforms for various things, it's a lot of it's pay to play. So, so the consumer, are they getting the best? No, I don't think so. They're going to get, some of these places, it's how much do you pay, how many times do you sponsor, and then you get the top spot. So it's I think it's tough.
I had a quick question on I guess, I don't know if it would be a prediction, not going to make you go on record here, but with the way the world is working, right? Like, I agree with the majority of what you're saying here. What's the reality?
You're going to say majority because you're like, not everything, in case she's wrong.
Well, no, I agree with like a lot of what you're saying.
What if she gets crap?
But the U.S. government is one of the biggest businesses in the world, if we're trying to be, honest about it. Why would they give that power up, right? And so that's where you kind of get into, the CBDCs and control of that. I feel like as a lot of governments are kind of becoming more of this nanny state and taking away a lot of freedoms. I agree with you, right? I'm in the space. I love this space. But how do we get to a place where the government is like, okay, yeah, use other currencies besides ours, with the de-dollarization, with oil and bricks, people are not trading dollars now for for oil, and like the bricks, I don't know if that's real, but like there's been a lot of conversation of that. And so like, where do we go with everything that's happening in the world right now? Even with Venezuela, you see like no one's really trusting their government, but at the same time, they're the ones with the military. So how does this all kind of play out over the next 3 to 5 years, or even closer now with the election in the U.S.?
And hold in on that really quick. One thing I'll throw in there that JP said, Jerome Powell said yesterday on his press briefing. He said, somebody asked him about CBDCs, and he said, we're not doing anything. I was like, interested. So, even if they want to do something to this question, they're going to be behind the 8 ball.
So CBDCs, I'm fundamentally opposed to, like, across the board. It would be really hard for me to change my mind. I've said this a bunch of times. Like, this technology has the ability to block you from accessing your money. And there's no like button or alarm or klaxon or whatever that, you're basically as safe as your government lets you be. So people say like, well, this government, that may be the Chinese that block you from a transaction because they don't think it's good for you or whatever. You don't have the reputation points for that purchase or whatever. But we would not do that. Now, look, my family is from a country that has an older democracy than the US until they elected a dictator. It's all fun and games until they round people up and start shooting them in the soccer stadiums. So look, man, I will always believe that a government, you're only as safe as the government you currently have. You cannot trust that any institution is like, stronger than the people who are currently running it. Like, you have to maintain these things. It's very important to me that we always look at, what does the Constitution say? Like, what is the government doing? What is the letter of the law? What does the law require them to do? What are they permitted to do? Like, these things are important, and it's important that we monitor this stuff, that we be active and aggressively active in monitoring what people are doing, because when we ease up, we create a power vacuum, and someone always fills a power vacuum, and that's a dangerous thing, right? So, look, a CBDC fills a power vacuum. We'll create a non-monitoring, hole. And we're not going to be looking when someone decides, this technology will be able to stop people from purchasing something. And look, they'll say, just temporarily, we're going to stop people who are terrorists from buying things that are terrorist supplies. And then that list of terrorists is going to grow, and we're not going to be able to monitor it because it's terrorists and public safety and protected from FOIA and all that stuff, right? And that's like how, the Patriot Act that was supposed to sunset many decades, like many years ago, didn't actually sunset. And there's all these provisions that get added and added. And look, I want the protection of the country as much as everyone, but it's these little things that grow up to be big things. And that's how innocent people get trapped. And that terrifies me, right? Because I am less scared of dangerous people walking around than innocent people being caught in a government trap, simply because that would be my kid, right? Like, my kid is not going to do anything bad. I firmly believe, right? My kids are like the sweetest people in the entire world. And they really are. They're like way nicer than me. And that's their dad. That's like, they told like 100% their personalities from their dad. Maybe not my youngest, the gymnast person, but they're like really nice kids. And like, I would hate to have to fight the government to prove that they did nothing, because I'm a lawyer. And what do I know? The hardest evidence to get is to prove that nothing happened. That is impossible to prove. Proving nothing, like the absence of evidence, is impossible. So I get very scared with, government encroachment, simply because the proving that you didn't do something is so hard. So bringing this to CBDCs, if the government decides that they want to stop you from accessing your money, you having to prove that you have the right to do it by proving the absence of something. I didn't do anything wrong, therefore you have to give it to me, is going to be very hard. So trying to regain your asset is going to be very difficult. And we're only as good as that government is going to allow us that asset. So I don't want them anywhere in our system. I understand there are people who are like, but they're convenient and things like that. Honestly, inconvenience is worth it for me.
Mm-hmm. Now, real quick piggyback, and I see we're coming up on time. What would you say to naysayers that say, you saw what happened in Canada? They can do it with credit cards today, right? And I'm of this position as you. I'm on the same thing. I don't want CBDCs, but would love your take to see like what are we missing, right? Like, for example, like again, they can freeze your credit cards, they can freeze your bank account if they wanted to today, right? So what would the difference be with CBDCs versus what they have the power to do right now?
Of what they can do right now? Well, so to freeze your assets right now, they need a subpoena and a probable cause, right? So they have to actually get government documents to freeze your assets in a CBDC. They don't. They don't need any of that stuff. Like, it's literally a technology that allows them to stop it. And like, there's nothing in the technology, like, they control it. It's their money. that we have access to, which is the reverse, which is for them to have access to it, they need to go acquire some, like legal right to have access. So, but a CBDC, they have ownership and they give us access, right? Which is the opposite. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I'm pretty well versed in it. I just, for the audience as well, I want to make it clear of kind of some of the delineations between the two. Jody, Sean, do we have some other questions on your end? I'm just looking at the time. I want to be conscious of that.
My end, I'm good. Alex, this was a blast.
Thank you.
I just love how passionate you are, because as Jody and Avi will tell you, like, I think we're all, like, anybody involved in this space to the level I think the four of us are and others we know are extremely passionate. It's always great to see someone that is willing to kind of step up for everyone else and be like, here's really what, some of the truth and what things need to change. Because a lot of people won't say it because, they, whatever reason. But so I admire you, all of this, and really want to get you back on here. This was fantastic. I got to jump because I got to go to another one, but this was fantastic.
Yeah, Alex, really appreciate taking the time. I feel like on a week like this where you have like end of month sell off, it's a little bit red across the board for everything. So when we're talking about market insights, honestly, it's great to just come out of a conference like BTC Nashville, which I think is one of the most significant, with political parties there, huge global figures, and then be able to dissect it, right? If you've been around, you saw like the ICO boom, you saw like the negative side of it. You're not afraid to talk about the negative side of it. And then talking about the negative side of the stump speeches and being like, look, guys, like, is that really what you need to be focused on? Is excellent. So Alex, would love to have you back sometime, and appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Make sure to follow her on Twitter as well. You're an awesome follow. I started following you a couple days ago, and really like it. You're very real. How you're talking now is how you convey yourself on Twitter as well, which is great. So it's at Alex Damsker, Damsker on X, not Twitter. So thanks so much for hopping on.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Take care.
You bet.